There we Hey, all right. Welcome to Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday. Yeah, so I was saying just got back from uh Kennecott, which is this beautiful former mining town. We have like friends and family that are up there. And so it was awesome. I went ice climbing for the first time in a long time. It was super great. Um, did some reading by the creek. The weather was awesome. So I'm feeling really just refreshed after spending all that time in the mountains. So great. I just love how I'm just surrounded by so much beauty. So this weekend, I'm hoping to get out to the yurt, maybe listen to some live music. We have the 6 Mile Pack Raft Festival, which will be super fun. People take these hilarious rafts down this canyon, like, like big floating golden goose rafts and like unicorn rafts and things down this little class 3 canyon. It's super cute and fun. So I'm stoked to do that. And then we have a little live music and down by the river and all that. So I hope you all are still enjoying summer and have some amazing things planned. Um, okay, so I'm back in the office. I know the last week, the fuck up Wednesday, I was like walking with my camera, hiking really fast uphill because I had to meet my group to go ice climbing. But anyway, it was super awesome. So today I wanted to talk about how being human is hard. Okay. Like I know you've heard me say different iterations of this, but you know, in Buddhism specifically, there's a teaching, the Buddha's first teaching called the Four Noble Truths. And one of them, the first thing that our homeboy decided to teach, right, was about suffering and that there is suffering and that it's part of uh, essentially being human. So that's why I call this, being a human is hard, because I think when we use the word suffering, people go like, I don't want to admit that they're suffering. Why are we talking about suffering? Suffering's so awful. And we're going to like manifest it if we think about it and talk about it. But what I have found is so many of us try to pretend that life doesn't have suffering. We don't want to talk about getting older. We don't want to talk about getting sick. I'm not saying getting older has to be involve suffering all the time. I'm just saying that there's things that happen as anything gets older, like things work differently, things stop functioning differently. But we do get sick, right? All of us will die. All of us will age to whatever degree we're meant to, right? And when we act like that's not supposed to be happening, right? Like, oh no, why do I have wrinkles? Oh no, why can't I kayak the way I used to? Why does my shoulder always give out? Right? Like when we start pretending that hard things aren't supposed to happen, like why did my friend die? That wasn't supposed to happen, right? When we have so much resistance to it. And that resistance creates so much suffering in us beyond the suffering that is just a part of being human. I mean, there's also a teaching about like the 3 types of suffering, right? So we have physical suffering, right? We have like more immediate suffering of like physical pain, maybe like the suffering in chronic illnesses. We cut ourselves, we break things, we ache. We also have the acute mental suffering, right? The psychological suffering of emotions, right? We also have the suffering of the fact that things change. So, um, we experience something and it's awesome. And then we have the suffering of when it's not awesome anymore, right? We have the suffering of um, then something that maybe we have an aversion to arising, right? And then that goes away too. But, we start grasping onto things that we don't want to go away that will inevitably go away. And we create so much suffering when we think, oh, no, no, no. Happiness is supposed to last forever. And when it ends, that means something's wrong. It means I fucked up. It means it shouldn't have happened. It means I don't deserve this, right? But it's not true. That's the nature of things. Things are awesome, and then things are not so awesome. And then things are awesome, and then things are not so awesome. But see, can you see the suffering that happens when we are not accepting that that's part of life and part of being human? Then the third type of suffering is almost this like existential angst, this sort of like, well, what is the meaning of me being here? Do I even exist? What is my purpose here? That can arise no matter how awesome our life is. I see this all the time with my clients, right? They get coached, they do awesome things, they create this amazing life, and then they're like, well, now I want to get coached on why I can't enjoy it because I put in all this effort, time, money, and energy to create this amazing life. And yet I still feel a little bit of emptiness here, right? Or think about the times in your life that maybe you felt like, is anything I'm doing having any meaning? Right? Like, what's the purpose of this? Why am I doing this? That's that third kind of suffering that arises because we have an awareness of the kind of inherent instability of life as it is, right? And so some people are like, well, if I think about all that, it makes me kind of depressed. And what I want to emphasize here is that, being depressed is actually being stuck in the suffering, right? And not moving out of it. And so it's not like you get depressed by thinking about how shit can be hard, right? We certain types of depression. I'm not talking about all types of depression. And let's sort of leave severe depression out of this conversation. But when we reflect on this and we get stuck in it, then we are actually ignoring the fact that things change and that it won't last forever, right? So just like the awesome things don't last forever, the hard things don't last forever either, unless we hold on to it, right? So I have found that when I acknowledge that life is inherently challenging sometimes, right? That being in a body is hard. Being born with a brain is hard. Being born with a brain that can remember suffering, being born with a brain that can imagine worst case scenarios, being born with a brain that has all of these potential ways of making us suffer, right? It can be really challenging sometimes. And so I really want to encourage you to look at when we are suffering as just, ah, this is part of life. Like I talk about how, when my practice was really strong, because, I go through waves of my meditation practice really being really strong and waves where it's not. Like I was in this period of doing retreat, going to Dharma talks every week, meditating regularly. And then my father died. And I remember almost being surprised with myself at how I was able to fully grieve and be sad and accept, right? I didn't have stories of like, oh, is this supposed to be happening? And why is this happening? And all of that, right? It was, yeah, this is what happens. We get old, we get sick, we die, we lose people we love. And let me tell you that I have found when I remember that, contrary to popular belief about being more depressed, I'm like, when I was with my dad, every time I saw him, it was like, I love you so much, right? As if I might not see him again. When we would have conversations and it was like, um, I felt like getting upset with him. It was like, well, is this really worth it? Because he's not going to be here forever, right? We have that increased awareness of what to prioritize when we reflect on these things. Yeah. So I have found that in the end, I live more fully and I'm more present. Now, some people have denial of suffering. I had that like as a teenager. Like, I think I may have told you all like the time when my friend asked me, like, we were all hanging out and we were chatting about our families and got to me. And I was like, no, everything's good in my family. Like, I'm pretty lucky. And I thought, oh, like, that's a good thing, right? To be like, it's a positive outlook. And my friend was like, that's such bullshit. Like, your father has schizoaffective disorder. You live in a totally fucked up neighborhood that's violent. Like, you can't even go outside to play, all this stuff. And he's like, you're just like in denial. And I was like, oh shit, I think he's right. I was in denial of my suffering. And I thought that I was sort of being all evolved by not letting it bother me as much. But it's not like acknowledging the suffering means you have to like fucking wallow in it and feel like shit all the time. Instead, it's like, oh, there's that thing that happens. Because you know what happens a lot is people will start a business or start a relationship or start a program, like a graduate program or something, and then shit'll get hard. She'll get hard and they'll be like, oh, this was supposed to be easy. If this is happening, it means I'm not meant to do this. It means there's something wrong or something's wrong with me. Why is this happening to me? Why are they succeeding and I'm not? Why was the relationship so good and it's not? Well, remember, like one of the types of suffering is the suffering of change too, right? Like we all have felt that too, where it's like we're so happy, right? We just had like amazing sex, or we are like our business is doing great, or we just had an amazing day at work, and then boom, something happens, and we're like, fuck, I was just feeling so amazing. Why did that just happen? Now it sucks again, right? But really, that's life. Like, and instead of getting so devastated because it stopped, we can be like, shit is really good right now. Let me enjoy it. Let me savor it. And then when it's not, we can say, oh, yeah, so this is life. This is what happens. It's not all fucking rainbows and unicorns. And then we know that that too will pass. And then it comes back again. So we can have a reflection about this, right? Just start noticing in our lives that when we acknowledge that things change and that it can be hard when it does change, then we can do what it takes to really savor the present moment. Yeah. And so let's recap. So we want to acknowledge that being human is fucking hard, right? And that denying it and pretending that it's not supposed to be hard actually creates more suffering, right? It actually creates more suffering for us because why? We are fighting reality. Whether or not you believe that being human is hard, shit is still going to happen. Like, some people are afraid of manifesting if they acknowledge that life is hard. It's like, hey, man, that's like low vibration. If we're like thinking about how, being a human is hard. What if it were easy? And here's the thing, you can believe what you want, but people are still going to get sick, grow old, and die at the very minimum. You can like do whatever you want, but like things are still going to happen. You're going to lose people you love. Like things will change, like little challenges will happen. What makes something low vibration or not is not that shit happens. It's how we respond to it. Okay. So we can say, hey, being a human's hard. You know what's low vibration is ignoring it and then not acknowledging the pain that's going on or the suffering that's going on, and then having that build up. We can see, wow, it's really hard to lose people we love. It's really hard when we love something and then it stops or it goes away, right? Or when we're having some success and then it goes away. So instead of getting bogged into the why me, why now, why all of this, it's like, this is part of being human. This is part of being born in a body, part of this life, of this precious life. So instead of spending all this mental energy about why, and why now, and all of that, we can be like, this is part of it. And this too will change, right? So when we embrace the yin and yang, right? When we embrace that being human is hard, that there's two sides, that we need contrast in the world. We need the contrast of lightness to have and darkness to even understand the existence of the two. Being part of human is like that. Like I remember a breakup I had. And again, it was during this time where my practice was really strong. It was like a lot going on. My dad had died, and then I had a breakup. And I remember crying about the breakup, but it was from a place of like, wow, like I'm just so glad to be human and to be able to have experienced love and connection and that magical muse and joy of that relationship. And yeah, this is part of it. This is what happens. We can get sad and we lose people that we love. And there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with life. This is the nature of things, right? Oh my gosh, I could move through that so much more healthfully, right? So earlier I gave the example of when my father had died and my practice was strong and how gracefully I was able to handle that. Well, then I had a kid, and then I was in a doctoral program with a toddler. I was managing a project in Nepal with like 18 rural clinics and a tertiary care hospital in Kathmandu. And like, I was in Morocco because I was about to finish my program. I was going to do my final presentation, and then I was going to celebrate there. And um, my my mom passed away while we were in Morocco, and I had not been meditating regularly. I was just barely keeping my shit together. And I tell you, those were some of the darkest days. So much guilt around not being by her bedside. I wasn't by my dad's bedside either, right? So much suffering from that because my practice wasn't strong and I wasn't remembering, right? The saving grace was, at least at a minimum, I always would ask myself, you know, what if this was the last time I ever saw this person? I did do that. And fortunately, I talked to her the day that she died and told her I loved her, right? Even though things weren't perfect in our relationship, I conveyed that. And it just was such a interesting and stark example to me of how when we can embrace that being a human is hard and that it's a part of it, then we can really savor those moments when we are loving life and when things are going really well and when we are with the people we love, right? It can give me strength to know that the hard times will also end just like other things end, right? It can free us in so many ways when we can open up to the fact that being human's hard, we can give ourselves some self-compassion, stop fighting with reality, and start creating the life that we were meant to live without getting bogged down in believing that hard times are never supposed to happen. We get grit, we get resilience, right? It's like something happens and we're like, all right, I can do this too. Like I remember a couple weeks ago, before I was leading the Freedom School retreat, which was awesome sauce. It was in Girdwood. It was amazing. It was like I had everything planned, and then like more shit got added onto the plate that I couldn't control, and then more shit got added, more shit, and I was just like, "Wow, this is really happening. All this is happening like right now." Yeah, okay. Well, I can do this too. It wasn't like, why is this happening? Oh my God. Blah. I was like, then I had more energy to deal with what was happening. Right. So I really want to encourage you to do these 3 reflections. I talk about them on the podcast that's going to drop tomorrow too. But one is to, if you're the type who's like, my life is blessed, my life is so amazing, right? I don't suffer. It's not that I want you to suffer more. It's I want you to be aware in the ways of which you are suffering that you may not be aware of. And again, this is not to create more negative emotion, it's to create increased awareness, right? And are there areas in your life in which you're resistant to acknowledge suffering? Like me, being in a dysfunctional household with a lot of chaos and abuse, like not not acknowledging that, right? Or think about your close friends, right? And the ways that suffering's showing up for them. Then also, you could think about a time in your past when you were super miserable, right? And you're like, I'll never be happy again. And then look at where you are now, right? So you can see life changes. And maybe something right now, something's going really well. And then it's like, this too will change, not in a depressed way, but like, I'm so going to enjoy this. And then when it does change, I'm not going to let it make me think anything's wrong. Notice how they're paired, the suffering and the happiness, right? And then maybe for the rest of this week, you can become aware of when you experience a level of pain in your mind. And you could say, hey, how much of this is a fact, an objective fact, and how much of this is my emotional resistance to what's happening in this present moment? And just get curious, right? Okay. And hey, if you want to join Freedom School, y'all, we have enrollment open right now. Go to joinfreedomschool.com. We're going to be doing some cool shit this summer. We've got the fall cleanse coming up, some amazing things. Oh, and the Adventure Mastermind is going to get released pretty soon. There should be some spots open. I'm going to open it up first to Freedom School students. And then if there are some spots still open, I open it up to the rest of the list. Think 6 months, 2 amazing retreats where we do adventures together and have an amazing time. And I can't wait to share with you what the focus of this year's Adventure Mastermind is going to be. Okay. So join Freedom School if you want in on that early, joinfreedomschool.com, and then keep an ear out for the Adventure Mastermind because that's going to be amazeballs too. Okay. If you have questions, just go ahead and message me and we can chat about it too. Because I know some people are probably going to be like, oh, what should I do? Which one? So it's all good. Okay. Hey, thanks for coming today. We're going to wake the fuck up to whatever is happening in our lives right now. Right? All of it. All of it. It's all a part of it. And it's all totally worth it. What a precious thing to be alive today, right? Okay. I love you. Bye. Here we go. Ending all the things. Bye, Autumn. Bye, Franny. Bye, Kate.